Coming up next, Wales versus South Africa and the CRC Sevens. Brought to you by Friends of the British Council. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy here at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in New York City, talking rugby with Steve Lewis, the man that wears many hats. USA Rugby congressman, Elite Sevens coach, fashion model. Steve, we talked USA Rugby off the pitch. Now we're going to talk it on the pitch. You were in Philly. I was in Washington. We got a lot to talk about. Let's start with you.
Sure. Philadelphia Collegiate Rugby Championship run by United World Sports.
Invitational.
To Collegiate Rugby Championship.
Okay.
Anyway, top teams in the country. Fantastic venue. Great event. Players love it. Coaches love it. Parents love it. Good weekend. The winners were Lindenwood University. Came out tops. Did a back-to-back, having won the Nationals in Denver. The men came out and won in Philly. Having won the Nationals in Denver, the women came out and did the double and won in Philly. So back-to-back for both programs for Lindenwood University. That's a tribute to Josh Macy, men's side coach, and Billy Nicholas, women's side coach, ex-play rugby, old blue guy. And good weekend, lots of talent.
So that unifies the belts, so to speak.
Exactly.
If this was boxing, they've got all those different belts. Unfortunately, in rugby on the landscape, we have D1 championship and the CRC championship, right, for men and women. What you're saying is...
I'm saying Lindenwood proved the point. Dominant men's and women's college program in sevens, 2018. The finals... Lindenwood overcame a pretty gutsy, spirited UCLA side who came through in the other half of the draw. Some standout performance there from a young man, Ben Brossell, who really, really impressed me and everyone else.
11 tries, and he is with Ronan Nelson's UCLA program.
Yeah, and they had a terrific sort of come from behind, 28-14 down against Dartmouth, came behind to win it in extra time. So that was impressive. Lindenwood got past Life in the semi, which a lot of people thought really was the final. But that was the men's side. On the women's side, usual suspects, Life, Lindenwood, Penn State. NSCRO, the National Small College Rugby Organization, their select women's team actually made the semi-finals. That's a terrific performance under Bryn Chivers. They lost though, however. So Lindenwood Life went down to the last second with a Life player held up over the goal line on the women's side. So very exciting stuff.
Wow, that is good stuff. But Steve, shouldn't there be one National Sevens Championship and one National Sevens Varsity 15s Championship in men and women's rugby?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a talking point for some time. I mean, this is what the Varsity Cup was about. So there's some people who believe that national championships should be, you should have to qualify, and that makes it a legitimate national championship. On the other side of the fence, you have private commercial actors, United World Sports, who want to invest in rugby and put on superior events to USA Rugby, and they want to go down the invitational route. So there's a legitimate back and forth. What's a national championship? What's an invitational? But the proof of the pudding this time around was Lindenwood won both.
How do we unite the clans?
You don't. You're not going to under the current governance structure.
So we're going to have rugby longshanks.
No, you're going to have private actors doing their thing, as they're perfectly entitled to do, and in many cases providing a better experience for the athlete. And you're going to have the governing body, the national governing body, doing its thing and responding in its mind to what its members want. Two different considerations. One's an amateur governing body, one are private for-profit actors.
Why can't the amateur governing body turn the keys to the car over to the United World Sports folks?
That's a whole other show.
All right, that's a whole other show, and we don't have time for that. So you want to skip down to Washington, D.C., where I was, because we have different perspectives on this.
It would appear so. So like every other, old school American rugby junkie who used to wait 2 weeks to get a VHS of the British Lions playing in 1973, you were probably pretty happy about this event going on in D.C. So why don't you kick off?
All right, I'll kick off, Steve, because I'm speaking particularly from the fan standpoint. I understand you were upset with the Rugby Wrap-Up tweets about the positive spin that I seemingly put on the match, but that was the truth. I was there, and as a fan, I had very low expectations. I expected a disaster, and 21,000 fans there had a great time. It was a great tailgate. The stadium was ridiculously old and worn down, but that charm wasn't lost on some of the folks from overseas. I was with a couple of Welsh guys, a couple of Scottish guys, a couple of English guys, and they were talking about older stadiums, and they were waxing nostalgically about that. Go ahead. You want to ask me? Go right ahead.
Sure. No, and I understand that. I've got multiple friends who went there and enjoyed the experience, okay? I've also had multiple other friends who went there and said it was a shambles. The stadium, even you thought you were on the wrong stadium. It was the old RFK. The place was a disaster. The hospitality suites don't face the field. The post-match function between South Africa and Wales was held at an outdoor mezzanine level.
I was there.
Yeah, that wasn't too impressive by all accounts. But let's set that aside.
With the dumpster,
yeah,
they were emptying the dumpster downstairs, and you couldn't hear the people speaking, giving their.
So here's my question to you. Here's an event that puts, by all accounts, a renegotiated fees of $450,000 to $500,000 in the pockets, in the coffers of two foreign unions, Wales and South Africa, and still costs USA Rugby a loss of around $500,000. You happy with that?
I am not happy about that, and I get all that, and I am glad that the folks that were responsible for that are now gone, in essence, and we did what we could to make that a positive. And kudos to Mark Lambourne and to Ross Young, interim CEO of USA Rugby, Ross Young, for circling the wagons and making the best of that event.
Yeah, I agree with that. And 21,000 actually is positive. And again, a positive experience if you're a fan. But if you're looking at the bigger picture, this game should never have happened.
Agreed.
Should never have happened. A South Africa B side against a Wales C side on a day when American rugby players are playing 2 hours away, cannibalizing fans for both events. Just absolutely shocking. It goes back to our previous segment about the board.
I don't know that you're really losing that many fans from one of those events to the next. You're talking sevens, you're talking college sevens, and you're talking about international test rugby. So I don't necessarily agree with that. And there's always
so here's a question for you
about how many fans actually go to the CRCs.
Here's a question for you. Do you think it would have been a good idea to play that game and done the Collegiate Championship in the same venue?
I do.
Do you think that was suggested?
I have inside intel from you that actually did happen, and that offer was not taken, which was the dumbest thing.
Yeah, I rest my case. Because of the initial contract, the initial financial considerations required a crowd of 27,000 plus.
27,000 plus.
The Talent Energy Stadium in Philly is about 18 or 19. And so on that basis, that misguided basis, it was declined. The offer was declined.
All right, but how would you have made that work if you have a certain amount of money to bring those teams over and you only have a certain amount of seats?
The contract was ridiculous, what they offered those teams. And when everyone knew that it wasn't going to be A-side versus A-side. South Africa, for 3 test series against England, they were not sending their top dogs to Washington to play Wales. Wales' first test on their summer tour. Come on, we were taken and embarrassed. The press in the UK talked about the devaluation of test rugby. This is it.
Yeah,
Press in the UK.
I saw that.
The press in the UK talked about, actually this goes back to Flo. I didn't experience this, but I hear that the TV production wasn't that clever. All in all, we got through the weekend, and again, credit to Mark and Ross for circling the wagons, credit to people in the DC area for getting out there and making it not as big a loss as it might have been for USA Rugby. So we have them to thank. But all in all, we need to put this weekend behind us.
All right. Fair enough. And again, it's just, as you said, I was happy to see the Barbarians versus the All Blacks tape over and over again. But to me, this was test rugby on American soil, crappy stadium. It should not have taken place, and yet it was a great weekend of rugby because of that match and the Honor Cup. at Honor Cup is going to be a different segment that you guys have to check out. We're out of time, my friend. So I want to thank you once again for coming on, your cantankerous self. But I still love you.
I love you too.
All right. With all the love, folks, we have to go. On Rugby Wrap-Up, Matt McCarthy and Steve Lewis here in New York at the Fantasy Sports Network, signing off.